Thanks to everyone else who's spoken before us today. So yeah, my name is Will, or most people in crypto call me Kemp. I lead ecosystem at AR.io, so we call ourselves the first permanent cloud network, and I'll go a little bit more into that in a minute. But today I'm going to try and solve this problem of permanent and permissionless data for the machine economy, and specifically how AR.io enables this, excuse me, for permissionless storage and collaboration at the data layer. So to kind of level set the problem domain, by the end of this year, we're looking at a market for DePIN for $32 billion, right? Which is a lot of money, a lot of capital that's relying on these systems. Yet it is the case that, at least in an estimation, that 90% of DePINs today still rely on mutable centralized infrastructure, at least in kind of a lot of their stack, particularly at the data layer. So what is AR.io network? So hands up in the room if you've heard of Arweave before. OK, cool. And hands up if you've used arweave.net, the kind of main ecosystem gateway. OK, cool. So AR.io network is designed, as it says over here, to decentralize the storage, indexing, and access of permanent data on Arweave. So we are essentially a gateway network that sits on top of Arweave that solves that problem. The underlying storage is all Arweave data. Our smart contract layer and sort of like protocols live on AO, which is a compute platform on Arweave. And then we have this kind of like gateway stack on top that solves this problem in a decentralized way. So this is kind of where we were when we started. For anyone who's familiar with Arweave, most people, they upload data, they fetch that data back from arweave.net, right? And that's great. It's worked. Arweave's been around for coming up on 8 years now. So there's no drop data, something like 350 terabytes of data, billions of requests, and it's all still there. The first transaction, you can go and get it. But you are still reliant, in most cases, on this centralized gateway to be able to do that. So with RAO, what we've built is a kind of a suite of services. So Turbo on the left is a high availability upload service. It allows you to upload data really, really fast, guarantees like immediate availability, handles finalization to the chain in the background, and gives you flexible options for payments. And we've recently rolled out X402 support as well. We then have the gateways themselves. So we took everything that we learned from running arweave.net at like really significant enterprise scale. And we created a open source, modular, really scalable gateway stack that anyone can run. It's super easy. You can do it on a Raspberry Pi, all the way up to like a multi-region deployment if you're kind of operating at that scale. Next, we created Wayfinder. So Wayfinder is a routing protocol. So one of the big problems that we see in decentralized storage is the point of access is typically not decentralized. You're hard coding a gateway URL to access your data, right? And I think this is true in pretty much every decentralized storage solution. So what Wayfinder allows you to do is you give it a transaction ID or an RNS name, which we'll get to in a sec, and it will find a gateway in the network that can serve your data and then serve that data for you from that gateway. And you can configure it with strategies for choosing the gateway. So you can have like a preferred gateway and then fall back to the network. And you can configure that fallback to operate on different variables. So you might want like the top staked gateway in the network, or maybe the top 5 fastest pinged gateways in the network. Wayfinder will basically guarantee that it will serve the data back to you without having to worry about which gateway it comes from. And then RNS, which stands for Arweave Name System, is a permanent domain system. Excuse me. What this allows you to do is associate a human-readable name with any transaction ID of data stored on Arweave, and then you can access that as a subdomain of all of the gateways in the network. So you get this like resilient story, both for like hosting websites, where you can kind of think of it as like eth.limo, but there's 600 or so eth.limos. And also, more and more recently, it's been used as like a decentralized GET API. So it doesn't have to be a website, right? It just points to data on Arweave. So you can kind of plug these things together to like point a human-readable name at data on Arweave, access it via Wayfinder, and you get this completely decentralized GET API for your data on Arweave, which we think is really quite cool. And then what we have here is kind of like a map of all of the functionality in the network. I'm not going to go into all of them because we'd be here all day. But if you want to like kind of get a snapshot of the different features and functionality in the network, from traffic management, content delivery, naming and identity, permanent storage, compute, index query and operational services. All of this stuff is available in the open source gateway node that either you can run yourself or is being operated by operators in the network already. And this is where we are now, right? So users will upload via Turbo. Turbo will push that into the network. Ultimately, the data settles on Arweave, but you have now in the middle sort of around about 650 gateways that are all independently indexing this data, and they all talk to each other as well. So you have, if a request comes in to get data from the network and one gateway doesn't have it, it will first try and find it from other gateways in the network, and if it can't do that, it will ultimately fall back to pulling it directly from Arweave storage nodes. But you get this resilient, kind of like hot cache indexing layer on top of Arweave that's not reliant on that individual gateway that we had in the past. And then you've kind of got Wayfinder down here for access, where the user just gives it transaction ID or RNS name, and as we explained before, it will go and find it from the network. So hopefully that diagram makes sense. I've been trying to get this meme to fit and to land with people. I think this is the final boss of decentralized storage, right? Is how do you decentralize how you access that data? And I'm happy to be corrected, but I don't think there is a decentralized storage solution out there that has this kind of decentralized access story. So this is how I see it. RIO are trying to defeat that final boss of, it's great if your storage is stored on a decentralized network, but if I can take down a single gateway and you can't access that data, it doesn't really matter, right? You're going to lose access. So how is the network doing? So we've got about 4,000 RNS domains registered. There's around about, I think it's about 650 gateways in the network at the moment, bunch of monthly active users, hundreds of terabytes of data, billions of transactions. Altogether, it handles about 90% of the traffic on Arweave. And kind of like daily streaming, we're in the terabytes, thousands of requests per second. This is like a snapshot of our Grafana dashboard. It's only for a subset of nodes in the network. And then these are some of the kind of like major integrations of folks that are using it. Some of those names probably jump out to you. Others maybe don't so much, but we'll go into a case study in a little bit. And how does this work in practice? So typical kind of decentralized network structure, right? We have a hosted solution, which is where we run everything at very high availability that folks can use. And then you can also, if you want, either use the network directly or run all of these services yourself. And typically how we operate is we'll work with teams and like proof of concept stuff at this stage, and then try and like back it into the network over time, because the decentralization of it is really difficult. And I think we do this in a lot of decentralized systems where it's like you don't need to decentralize everything straight away. You want to kind of progressively get there once you've proven that you can do it at scale and you've worked out all of the kinks, because decentralizing stuff is pretty hard. Okay, cool. So how does this apply to DePIN networks? So this is like a architecture diagram that I've made. Your DePIN network may be a little different. I think it might have been inspired by a WeatherXM architecture image I saw somewhere. So man, forgive me, dude, but you're the guinea pig here. So on the left, we have devices. Then we have kind of like a layer that processes this storage. Excuse me. That typically then goes into like a hot and cold storage setup, right? This stuff is mostly centralized in most cases. And then on the right, we have the protocol. The protocol sort of verifies the data that's there, rewards people based on that data, sells access to that data. And that's kind of my vision of how the model works. And this is great, right? It works. We provide $32 billion worth of value for these things in the world. Like, this isn't a bad thing. It's just kind of where the architecture is at for a lot of these systems at the moment. So if we were trying to apply, oh no, hopefully you can read some of this stuff. If you were trying to apply REO network to the same model, kind of a lot of that whole middle stack, you can replace with the REO network. So my diagram obviously is a little small, so you might find it difficult to read. But on the left, we still have devices. Those devices are independently signing and uploading data via Turbo, which is our hosted service, but they can also run the upload service themselves locally on their machines. So you could go straight from every single individual device directly into the network without that middle layer. It's there at the minute because running those things at scale is quite difficult, and Turbo does a good job of doing that. So that data then reaches the gateway network. The gateway network settles it on Arweave and kind of distributes it around itself. So you get this kind of like hot index cache layer we were talking about earlier. Excuse me. And on the right, we have the protocol again, right? So in most cases, what teams will do that we've worked with is they will operate their own sort of highly optimized gateway, so they can control the quality of service that they're giving to like enterprise customers, right? Enterprise customers have requirements. We talk about 9 a lot. They want their data when they get it, and they might have sort of certain ways of paying for data, which is very difficult to do in a decentralized way. But there is this kind of setup where you have the dedicated gateway, and then you have this like failover to Wayfinder. So you can run your infrastructure, but if your infrastructure goes down, you can always fall back to the network, and the level of service that you get is not going to be the same, at least not now, maybe in the future. But you can guarantee that you can provide access to that data, even in like critical scenarios like today with Cloudflare going down, or 2 weeks ago with AWS going down. That access story still exists. And with kind of X402 being enabled at different layers of this stack, we hope in the future that we can maybe even decentralize some of this stuff as well, right? Where people are paying for access to the data set in a sort of machine-native way, and that payment for the access is split and distributed at that time. So it'd be really interesting as we kind of, get to that point to see if DePIN networks can use it to maybe even simplify some of this stuff as well around sort of, you can imagine like AI agents independently connecting to this data set and paying for access, and then some of that access being split amongst the network and the rewards. Cool. So hopefully that made sense. So I see kind of the key benefits for DePIN is permissionless device upload. So any device in the network can kind of independently upload data to this permanent permissionless data set. They don't need an intermediary service to do it. It's pay once, store forever. So in the machine economy and with AI agents, the ability to be able to fire and forget something and not have to worry about who's paying the subscription fee or if that data is going to be available in the future. You can build like really meaningfully decentralized systems where they send the data off, they pay the fee, they come back 6 months, a year, 5 years later, and that data is still available for them. All of the data on Arweave is sort of like cryptographically verifiable. When you sign an item, once it's signed at the upload, you can't change it, and then you can prove when you get it back kind of who uploaded it and that the data hasn't changed since it was uploaded, which in crypto-economic systems, when you need verifiability, is really important. We've spoken a lot about resilient decentralized access, and then we've kind of got, I don't know if you can see it, but at the bottom, scalable modular gateway stack down here. And as I said, most people will run their own gateway to guarantee a quality of service, and then fall back to the network as a failover to make sure that their data is accessible, even if it's not at quite the levels that they would like. So far we've got one main DePIN network who are building with us. These guys are called Dorad Network. They're similar to Wingbits. They have created a network of ground stations for tracking flights. And a similar sort of DePIN model. They're selling access to run the devices, and then there's like a crypto-economic model in there to reward those devices, and they sell access to enterprise customers on the data that they collect. But anyone can run it. It's a permissionless system. They are in testnet at the moment. They should be going to mainnet soon. And these were the kind of challenges that we got to is Nijat, the founder, really wanted to lean into permissionlessness and decentralization and wanted to be able to build a network in a way where they had to run as little of the infrastructure as they possibly could themselves. So we worked with them to solve that problem by leaning into everything that we've discussed today. We kind of covered it already, but these were the kind of the things that were important to them going into it. And for them, this is kind of where they got to. So they do still use Turbo. There is an ambition in the future for them to put bundlers or upload services directly into their ground stations. They've deployed their own gateway and kind of highly optimized this to serve their own data. So there's almost like a built-in event-driven ETL system in the gateways where as data hits the network, you can do things with it, right? You can process it and you can store it in new ways to increase the rate at which you can access that data, both at like speed and flexibility of querying. They deployed, this is actually, can I go back? So this is like a flight tracking portal. The flight tracking portal itself is stored on Arweave. So it's a kind of a mutable thing that can't go down. And then lastly, and this is really exciting for us, they are the first team, I think, that we've ever had that is directly monetizing data on Arweave. So they are building this permanent, ever-growing data set, and they are selling access to it. So it's really exciting for us. Here is some kind of like numbers for their network at the moment. They're a little bit out of date, but I think they are now the third or second largest uploader of data to Arweave, so all has been working very, very well. So that's kind of it for trying to map RAO network onto DePIN. And then for us at the moment, what we're excited about is we've released X402 for storage and access. We think this is really important in the machine economy and with AI agents. We've been doing a lot of work to build structured data sets on Arweave and make them available, as well as decentralizing indexes by storing them back on Arweave and making this all available behind decentralized APIs. And then, as we've just said with the RAD network, monetizing data sets and trying to back more of these paid features into the network so the gateways themselves are doing the work and being rewarded for it from the protocol. And that's kind of a journey that will take time, but as we figure these things out in a centralized way, we'll continue to try and decentralize them. And here's like just a snapshot at the minute of some of the teams that are building with us as a bunch. This is probably a little bit out of date. And that's it. So thank you very much, everyone. Please do come build with us. You can reach me here. You can head to our doc sites. We've got a specific DePIN builder's guide. And we are working with the Arweave core team to offer storage grants and kind of like solution design with folks. So if you're interested, grab us or shoot us a message, and we'd love to chat.